counting down. Even though I said, all right, so we are here. We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the episode 33 of Celebrating the Brand Ambassador. I'm really excited to be here today with a dear friend, Tom Richter and Jordan Bushell. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, Jordan? Is it Bushell?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And who are now figuring out how to share it to their page. So so Tom is here in New York and Jordan is in Toronto. For those of you who did not know that he lives in Toronto, he does, and he's Canadian. And we're going to talk about that because I didn't know that. I always thought he was a New Yorker. All right. So first question I always ask everybody, and I'll start with you, Jordan, is what is your current position? Who do you work for? And what are your responsibilities?
So my current position is Global Brand Ambassador for Hennessey Cognac and Manager of Trade Advocacy. So a really long title, but essentially because Hennessey is been building up its advocacy and its kind of foray into cocktails in the last 10 or so years. I've got a lot of different responsibilities. The word brand ambassador
doesn't cover
fits a lot of different roles.
It does.
And so for me, I feel like I'm a little bit of the Swiss Army knife, where every part of the company will come to me for the little touch where I add is this a relevant cocktail? Should we do this? What should we do? So whether that's helping them with the website and what content should be on there, to strategizing for how we launch a new strategy for VS or VSOP or something like that, along with then the more direct advocacy stuff, which is kind of trade events, strategizing on those, coming up with the how we're going to do it, and then ongoing strategy that kind of links those throughout. So there's a lot of stuff. COVID's made it all strategy with a few Zoom trainings, but normally I would be traveling while doing all that.
Yeah, wow. That sounds like a lot, but at the same time, it sounds like the dream job, because you are so heavily involved, and that makes your job so interesting and also gives you a voice in what is happening. So I think a lot of people probably envy that. But
I think anyone coming from like bar management or bar ownership, if you broke down their job, it's probably similarly chaotic. And I know that probably helped me coming from running bars, wanting to like have my finger on kind of everything that was going to make the bar better. Yes. And so like working those hours and it's crazy hours, but having your hand on all those things makes for ultimately like a through line for everything where it all makes sense and it all works together. And I think that's, though it is chaotic, there's a lot of people doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I'm just kind of adding to their thought process or adding to their creativity.
That sounds fantastic. I want that job. Tom, so tell me about your job and your current position and your responsibilities.
Okay, so I'm the East Coast Spirit Specialist for the Craft Spirits Cooperative. And what?
A lot of words.
It is. And in New York, we are the bulk of the spirits portfolio for Vintus New York. Our little company is pretty unique. It's this amazing hybrid, and the people who started it really are thinking outside the box. So they have a brand called Capuro Pisco. Those are the people who started our thing. And we're very not satisfied with the way traditional distributing situations were. So they formed a group, a cooperative of these small little producers, and started distributing themselves in California. Then we opened a New York office, with me being that, and we got product on March 7th of last year. And the 13th it closed. So we figured out that we were going to take this beautiful little portfolio and search for other distributors throughout the country and drop it into their lap, specifically for wine distributors that have little or no spirits, and then we become their spirits portfolio. We act as our company then works hand in hand with these distributors, and we act as brand builders, ambassadors. We are also importers, and then we manage national distribution of the domestic spirits that we have. So it's a real hybridized thing. We're a small company, so we're very nimble and was able to jump around and pivot on the spot this last year. And it's been a lot, but it's been a great year. I mean, and we've really, I'm very happy with this, and the people are awesome to work for.
That's amazing. No, I think what your company has done, and I know we're going to talk about it later on a little bit more, is such a solution for so many small brands that are looking for a distributor / salespeople / brand ambassadors and don't have a lot of budget. And it sounds like such a great thing. I mean, you're definitely going to expand upon it more. Jordan, I definitely want to dive into how you got this role, because it's definitely, it's a little unusual how you got the role of brand ambassadorship. So tell us how you got the job and the compelling circumstances behind it. And what about the role appealed to you and made you want to leave bartending?
So, I was a bar manager and still behind the stick in Toronto at the time. And I got asked to be part of the Belvedere Global Dream Job Search. And essentially this was a global competition to find the next brand ambassador, because Claire Smith at the time, who was their global ambassador, was really getting into the development side of the liquid and couldn't be everywhere at all times. So they needed a number two for her. And they spread it all over the world. And because it was a global comp, the first 2 rounds of the comp were video submissions. And I have a film degree, which was sitting dormant and dusty at the time. But a lot of friends were still in the business. So I had some great videos done.
That gave you such a leg up, because so many people are just filming themselves like in their bar off their phone. Tom, you probably did that for your bowls, competition.
I feel like a little bit like it is right now. Like competitions now, everybody's got editing apps on their phone and things like this. Like the stuff I had to go through to get those videos done versus what the average person can do on their phone is crazy to me. But made the final 8. It was in New York. Which is maybe why people thought I lived there. But I did well in that final 8, and unfortunately lost, or fortunately or unfortunately lost to Ali Didenenko, who became a Belvedere ambassador for more than just the 1 year. She's great. She worked for Belvedere for many years. And I was devastated because I didn't know if I wanted to be an ambassador, but I'm very competitive and hate to lose. And so I lost, went home to run my bar on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then Monday, I got a call from the company that was doing the PR for Hennessey at the time nationally. And they said, hey, we saw your videos for Belvedere. Do you want to come apply for this position with Hennessey? Because Hennessey was doing a small, 10-week kind of, let's rush 8 major markets and teach them how to make cocktails, and pseudo celebrity was with the person and everything. And they'd gotten 1,500 people down to 3. I joined as the 4th. They ended up flying me into New York because they called and didn't know I didn't live in New York. So they flew me into New York for a couple hours on the Wednesday. And then as I was going back to the airport, I called them and said, listen, that was whatever comes of this, that was an amazing experience. I've never been flown anywhere for an interview. Thank you. And they said, well, we're trying to work out how we get a Canadian to be the US guy right now. So that felt good. I went back and opened the bar, and a few days later I got the call, and then did that 10 weeks, then became national. And it was, to be honest, it wasn't something I had been looking for. But my dog's name at the time was Hennessey. So I felt like it was probably meant to be. And it worked out. I brought that up in the interview, and I think they thought I was joking, but it was meant to be. And it was, I think one of the things I always tell people is, to be a great ambassador, you've got to actually love the product. So many brands will try to grab a great bartender, but if you don't love the product,
absolutely,
it comes through, because bartenders we're experts at picking out fakes. People that walk up to our bar and are fake with us. It's, we see people every day. We see hundreds of people every day. So if you don't love the product, it comes through really quick. Yeah. And I've been with Hennessey over 10 years now. It was 10 years in January. So wow. It's, if I didn't love it, I think it would have shown by now.
Yeah, I think it would have come out by now. But what made you change? Like, you said, I remember we were talking yesterday or last week, actually, that, you weren't sure if you wanted to be a brand ambassador. So, and I get this question a lot from people, like, do I really want to be a brand ambassador? What does it really mean? Like, they have an idyllic of what they think a brand ambassador does, and it's a completely different role, and every company's different. So what about it kind of appealed to you?
Well, interestingly enough, it was the first thing for Hennessey was just that 10-week program of traveling the States and being kind of I described it as there was a woman named Takara Jones, and she was dubbed Lady Miss Hennessey or Miss Lady Hennessey. And she was the second or third runner-up for one of America's Next Top Models, like second or third season. Okay. But her claim to fame was she was a plus size model, and Tyra Banks really wanted her to win. So she had a lot of press around her, but she had already worked for Hennessey in the past. So it was kind of an easy fit. And the program was basically she opened doors and I filled them with content. So she got the doors open for a lot of interviews on radio and TV and stuff like that. And I would talk about Hennessey, its history, and how to make it simple cocktails with it, or more advanced cocktails if you wanted. But that 10 weeks gave me a little taste without a commitment.
Yep.
And so I got the taste, and I just took a leave of absence from work and then came back. And it was in March, so Canada's still cold in March. The bar wasn't too busy yet, so I was able to do it. And then I came back, and I was working at the bar, and there was something missing. There was like this controversy with the general manager at the time, and I was always fighting to try to make the bar better, and didn't understand why I was getting pushback on things that were customers liked and the bar liked and everybody liked. And so it was, at the end of the day, there was a conversation he had with me when they offered me the job. He said, well, when are we going to get you back? You got to make the decision. And I went, I'm going to go with Hennessey.
You also probably, to be honest, miss people just kissing your ass. You're like a celebrity flowing around. It's like you're the guy. You're like walking in. It's like, it's Jordan Bushell. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
About that
ambassadors get that. It's nice, but it's, I always looked at it like I had a GM once tell me, when you're behind the bar, everyone that walks in the front door is your boss in a way. Like if you make them happy, then you make me happy. And it's like, great. I understand where we stand. As an ambassador, I kind of flip it and go, everybody working behind a bar is in a little bit my boss, because my job as an ambassador is to give them the tools to do their job the same way a great owner should give the bartenders the tools to do their job, a great GM, a great manager. And they're going to represent my brand. Like the thousands of bartenders I've trained are representing my brand far more than I will in the time. I can't see that many faces, but they see, hundreds a day. So if I can give them the knowledge, or if I can help them mix a better cocktail, or, wherever on the journey in bartending they are, if I can help them, then I've done my job.
That's a great Who has a dog? Yeah. Tom, I'm sure you have a similar thing, because I know how much you love education. How much you love education, and you've been on both sides of the bar. What's your mantra? How the role of the educator is?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the core of what we're doing with our company, and it's like I was a little hesitant about, sales to me kind of is a 4-letter word sometimes, and the managers of our company, when I sat down with them, they were like, "Well, Tom, you're an educator. That's all we do. That's it. You educate, you have good product, you get in front of people, you tell them the story and let them try it." It's like, I don't push anything on anybody. I just want you to try what I have, because I've already tried it and I think it's pretty good, So I'm not going to tell you to buy stuff, but I'm going to help you find something that you're going to want, you know?
I think that's a great attitude as well, because it is hard to do. I mean, it is part of a lot of the brand ambassador roles are hybrid roles. Your job is to get placements, and as placements sell cases and, you know, menu placements. But there's also that other part of the role, which is education, expanding their world so that they can be better at their job, providing them some education, giving them a new product that they might not be familiar with, and like opening their eyes to something new. So I think there is the great balance of both. You know, I know most people, if you could prefer not to have to do sales and your whole role is education, I know that's my job at the end of my tenure at Diageo. My role was literally people came to the bar and my job was to educate them about cocktails and spirits and about bar program. And that's all I did. It was awesome.
Yeah, great.
I love that.
I feel like an ambassador, though, you know, it's always linked to sales in a way. Like you're doing ride with a sales team, or you're, you know, training a sales team. I always looked at it like the ambassador creates the opportunity for the sale. That if I'm doing my job, then you're looking at it going, oh, of course I should carry Hennessey if I'm going to carry a cognac. Of course I should play with, or wow, Hennessey works really well in these cocktails. Like, that's amazing. And then sales can step in and do what they do and try to make the best opportunity for everyone. But it is hard when you have those hybrid roles where you know, somebody expects sales, because that kind of takes it out of advocacy.
Yes. No, I think that's what a brand, when you can get work with, but it's very hard to do it. But I think you're the most effective when you are working with a salesperson and you're there just as a tool. You're there to support them and help them get those products in, and that's your role. I think that's the best thing. It's not always easy to do because it's really hard to get people's time, depending on what kind of company you're working with. That's not always easy. All right, so let's talk about that. So Tom, you know, you talked about you have an unusual company, right? Something a hybrid. Actually, I think we already kind of covered what your company does, or else you feel like there's anything missing. I mean, I think you are like the missing link of what you're, you know, for small brands. You want to bit more about what your company does? Yeah.
So what my experience as a buyer, I think, has helped me immensely on this side now. And what I noticed the most was like the big distribution companies. You have thousands of products, and if any of those products have a brand ambassador, they will succeed above the ones that don't, because everybody else is going to get lost in the shuffle. Okay, but a lot of little brands don't have the capital to have that huge salary to pay a brand ambassador. So what we are is this, it's a cooperative. So it's like there is a little, you know, there is a cost involved for these little brands, but then they have, well, with me, I think there's 10 brand ambassadors all over the country, you know, and we take care of a portfolio, which is another thing for me, is like I'm a little hesitant about having golden handcuffs to one brand, because as a bartender, that objectivity has to be there. But now I'm handling a whole bunch of stuff that I can just kind of find the best fit for someone. And it's the ideal situation for me, you know, and just the stressing of education, and just make sure we get everybody to taste everything at least once.
Well, let's talk about it. But Jordan, you do have that option as well. I mean, you work for one brand, but you have a whole range. So there's always something for somebody, right? There's multiple different marks within the portfolio. Yeah,
and it's interesting because they each have a different brand director, different brand managers, and they treat, you know, VS, Hennessey Black, VSOP, XO, you know, Parody Imperial, all of them as their own brands. And so sometimes I've pulled those together and said, hey, we have similar things going on here. Like they work together, but they're working in their own little areas for their own brand or their own mark within the Hennessey range. And I have to kind of weave those stories together to tell the story of all of them. And that's been the fun of it, because there's always there is a definitive, and one of the things I had to learn along the way was there's a definitive look and feel to each one of them that they want to get across, and how do you portray that when talking to different people, and how do you portray that when educating? And it's certainly, though, Hennessey VS drives the ship like that puts all the gas in the tank, that keeps the lights on. Everything else has needed to grow a long way, because when I started, it was VS. There was no other focus. The others were there, but then VS went on this incredible run, and then it started to be, okay, now we have some time to focus on VSOP, on Hennessey Black, on XO, and move on from there. So it's getting more interesting sort of every year.
That's fantastic. So also explain to me, because I don't know if it's the same at Hennessey, but the one thing that most people, and it shocked me when I discovered this, that brands, when they have separate brand managers, like Tanqueray base brand and Tanqueray 10 have two different brand managers. They come from two different budgets. They do not share budgets. Doesn't matter how well Tanqueray is doing.
Yeah.
Tanqueray 10 still, because when it was really tiny, had only tiny little budgets, and people were like, I was like, I don't understand. Like, why can't we have Tanqueray 10 doing this, and this? And they were like, we don't have a budget. I'm like, it's one of the number one selling gins in the world is Tanqueray. They're like, no, that's Tanqueray. I'm like, but you're the same company. They're like, yeah, no, we're not. We're on the same umbrella.
It's true.
But we share different budgets. And I was like, an eye opener. I was like, wow, I hadn't realized that they don't support each other. You know, you can sell together, but one could be spending money on one brand, but you're not supposed to be sharing that money with the other one, even though they're under the same umbrella. Yeah. I
mean, it came down to cocktails even, that it's like, no, we don't make Sazeracs with VS. We make them with VSOP. Now, I personally feel VSOP makes a better Sazerac, but if you as a bar want to make it with VS, that's fine, but I will not. Like, I'm making with VSOP because that was a VSOP thing to say, you know, it's a really balanced, beautiful, you know, it doesn't have the new oak that VS has, so it doesn't have that spice up front. So in an alcohol forward cocktail, that was VSOP's territory. And I had to kind of navigate that a little bit. And certainly, yeah, when you're talking about budget, just like Tanqueray, VS has the budget.
Right.
And Hennessey Black had a almost minuscule budget in comparison. And VSOP, and like they might all, you know, if you looked at my salary and you wanted to break it down that way, it was largely paid by VSOP, though it came out of marketing. So when of course I'm going to taste VS every time, largely came out of VS. Of course I'm going to taste VS every time, but there are some markets that are like, we've hit our VS goals. We need to hit our VSOP goals. We need to hit our XO goals, even though those might not have been anywhere near what the VS goals were. It's the ambassador role is a little bit about like navigating the politics of the brand world, and then also like translating that into the sales team or the markets, because everyone's got different goals, or they're at different stages in that goal setting. And so it's because I was working with both sides, it wasn't always easy, but it was finding a way to maneuver it. And I think training in bars helped that. There's a lot of politics that goes on in bars, especially bigger bars and things like that. So it does work. It does work interestingly when you're working with multiple brands. And I can see that with Diageo, that must've been crazy having not only that, but like Johnny Red, Johnny Black, you know, Johnny Blue, all of them. That would have been nuts.
It's only frustrating when people are like, I don't know. And I'd be like, I only have a small budget. And I'd be like, with Tanqueray 10 or Johnny, and they're like, I don't understand. Like, you work with Tanqueray. I'm like, different budgets, different world. And they just didn't believe me, like that there was this separation. And Tom, I don't know if you have that you have multiple different brands in your portfolio. I'm assuming it is just naturally that way. Every brand has its own budgets and what they're able to do.
Well, no, it's truly a cooperative here. So we have our budget that we spread around to everybody, you know.
So Tom, does everybody put in the same amount then?
Basically, I mean, there's different structures to the size of the company, and some of them it's amounts, and then, you know, it's complicated, but in the long run, yes, but it's just how it's structured. Yeah.
It's a socialist society.
Yeah.
How things are. That's really interesting. All right. So let's talk about this. So, Jordan, you know, for the past year and a half, you've been stuck in Toronto, right? So your home country, right? And I've never explored this. Explain to us the difference, liquor law, how the liquor industry works in Canada versus America. And America is like every state's a different country, but in general,
Well, we were talking a little bit about this before, and I call it like America's the home of the free, except when it comes to alcohol, because like alcohol law in America is crazy that you can't in some states in general. You can't give bars POS anymore, like items, like branded items. You can't give them in some states. You can't even give like a branded napkin to a bar because it can be considered bribery to carry your product. And that is just asinine to me in so many ways, because there are so many other businesses. Like when you talk about governments and money changing hands and
pharmaceutical sales reps.
And then all of a sudden you can't give a struggling bar coming out of COVID napkins. It's crazy, but it becomes a problem when bartenders want to represent brands while still bartending, because you can't often pay for that.
Yeah.
Like that would be considered bribery. And so when some brands are flying bartenders like all the time down to like Mexico or somewhere else, I'm like, how is this happening? Like, our legal department is like, no, you can't, so a great example, we just did a Hennessey My Way competition, which was globally, it was a way of giving back to bartenders. So we gave every bartender $500 or €500 around the world. And every market got to pick who those bartenders were, because we're like, you're struggling, you're out of work, whatever. Here's €500. Like, if you want to make a video, make a video. Right. And they all made cocktail videos and it was great. But in the US, we can't do that. So the first year we gave it to another rally to just pass out. And then this second year we did a competition because they were all back to work, everything. We said, okay, well, we'll give incredible prizes and things like that. We had to do it through Portland Cocktail Week.
Yeah.
So we sponsored a competition through Portland Cocktail Week where they fly bartenders to Cognac for us to host and educate. Well, Portland Cocktail Week has to pay for everything. And yet in Canada, we've got some of the strictest like government controls on our alcohol distribution, and yet we can do almost whatever we want in bars.
Yeah, and very different world.
It's crazy. Where you've got the LCBO, like running a bar in Toronto. I did it. I owned a bar in Toronto, and you pay more for alcohol than anywhere in the world. Minimum wage is $14, and that shouldn't go down. Everybody should have a living wage. But rent is almost nearly what New York is as well.
Wow.
And it's crazy. A bottle of Hennessey in Canada is $77 in Toronto.
How much is it in the
I can get 2 of them in New York for that. The most expensive city in the world.
Yeah. And then you have to sneak things. I know like a couple of people in Toronto or in Canada in general. I mean, they're literally sneaking things over the border because they just can't get certain products you can't get because the LCBO didn't approve it.
Yeah. Or they'll do something crazy like saying, oh, well, this bottle is really expensive. So if we get the 375 ml bottle, it's cheaper for people. Yeah, but it's more per ounce. Yeah. So that helps no one.
Yeah, it must be such a frustrating system on both accounts about what we can't do here and how it operates over there. Thank you. It's I don't think most people are aware of how big and how LCBO, right? They have the largest buying power in the world.
The LCBO is the single largest purchaser of alcohol on the planet.
Yeah.
And they are the, if I'm correct, I believe it's like, I heard this stat at one point, they are the only retail outlet in the world that makes 150% profit.
Wow.
Because they charge massively for everything, and they're all government controlled.
It's insane.
So our government in Canada hates monopolies unless they own them.
Very, very Canadian. Well, actually, and to expand on that, you said to me something yesterday about being a Canadian in America. You had to adjust a little bit, like your personality, because we are very different types of people. Like everybody says about Canadians, they're so nice.
Yeah, we're super, unless we're playing hockey, we're very accommodating. America in the business world is aggressive. And I think somebody once explained it to me that it's like it's like Ricky Bobby, Will Ferrell, like if you're not first, you're last. It's like that's a parody, but it's kind of holds true in a lot of ways. It's like you compete in so many ways. It's like the NCAA, like perfect example of that. Like it's driven for gold or nothing. And being in Canada, it was a lot more laid back. Like, I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do it well, but I'm part of a team. We're going to work like this. And I had to learn to fight for myself a little bit more, be a little bit more stubborn and push through some things because, there were a lot of people that looked out for me and a lot of people that put me in this position, but to progress myself forward and to get some things done, I had to kind of be aggressive and put myself out there more for it because it just, it wasn't going to happen otherwise, whether that be advocacy initiatives for Hennessey or me personally to grow to be global. It took pushing and it took being more American in that way. And I think I've talked to a few friends about that it's just, it's a beautiful, it's why you have the economic powerhouse you do. It's got its flaws in certain ways, but as far as like driving for success, there's a mentality there that Americans have that not just Canada, but many other countries don't have that same kind of drive.
Yeah, I don't know. Tom, do you think Tom, I think you'd make an excellent Canadian. I think you're
I take that as a compliment.
You should take it as a compliment. You're a nice person and so laid back. I think you're an excellent Canadian.
I grew up in Minnesota, so I'm an honorary Canadian.
Oh, yeah, you're right there.
There you go. So yeah, some of them.
They're the only ones that know how to play hockey. It was great.
Right, and then the Minnesota North Stars got bought by Texas, and what the hell is that about?
Oh, that's terrible.
Minnesota has no hockey team. Whatever. Wow. that is terrible. But there is definitely that mentality. And we actually talk about it a lot here on the show is that people talking about you do have to be an advocate, whether you're from Canada or not, like in every part of your career about what you need to get yourself to the next role. Because a lot of people, and you guys have all worked at different places. And Tom, I know you worked at a lot of places, to really get to yourself to the next level or to make sure that you feel comfortable in your job. It's good to I always tell people, find somebody within the company that you can talk to, that can be like a mentor to you, to help advise you when you're struggling with things or you want to change the trajectory of your career. You need to find somebody who can help you with that. I always find a champion, somebody who champions you, because it really is important. And Tom, I know we were going to talk about this next, but I think this kind of leads into it. Like the people you're working for, even though you didn't work for them before, they seem to champion you because Tom said something really great yesterday. He said, the company, the Pisco company said, we're not creating this company or else you're in because we really want you, which says a lot about you, Tom, your reputation you've built. And so I love talking about it because you've did a lot of different roles. So you're talking about, what do you think are some of the great qualities that have companies seeking out somebody like yourself? Like, what are some attributes that bartenders should have or people in general should have? Yeah, well, I think that it was, for the bar folk who want to end up on this side, I think it's really, really paramount importance to work with and for the people you really respect the most and where you can learn stuff. I mean, the learning thing is so key, man. When I was bartending and there was ever an educational opportunity, I went to every single one of them. I had the biggest bonus of my life was working for Sasha Petrasky at when we opened the John Dory Oyster Bar. And that kind of started me right down this intense cocktail world. And then from that came the Beagle. And then we were doing, it was working with Dan Greenbaum and Matt Piacentini, and these guys had talk about outside the box and supportive. And we were, Dan is a big sherry guy, and he completely brought me down the sherry road. And we were at the forefront of putting sherry in cocktails, and we were one of the first cocktail bars that you didn't have to worship at our bar. You didn't have to go through the secret entrance to get in. You just come in and sit down, and so I was the advice is pay attention to each step along the way and really appreciate each step and get the most out of it, not by draining it, but by putting into it, and, be honest and use good product, don't skimp ever, so yeah, I mean, I did a couple cocktail competitions, did well, but that wasn't my road. It got to be too much like theater, and I really am more about wanting to be a bartender instead of, I used to be in the theater. First half of my life, I was in the theater. So,
but people don't remember you. I think also not being a dick is definitely up there.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
No, yeah, don't be being a really nice guy, and everybody, you do a really great job at the bar educating people, when they sit down about their products and what they're drinking, and people remember that. It makes you a natural of somebody who's yeah, talk to Tom. He's going to educate you. He's going to be that person passionate about your product. It. Yeah. And be passionate, just get into it, put 110% behind the stuff that you believe in, and the stuff you don't believe in, don't waste your time. No, don't waste your time. And Jordan, for you, it's the same thing. You were nodding your head about finding the advocate within your company. Is that something that and also, obviously, and we'll talk about your film career as well, your film skills. But let's talk about the advocacy, because you were nodding your head about that.
Yeah, it's coming from the bar world. It operates differently to the business world. There's some similarities, but within the business world, if you're a manager, you have a ladder, you have a career path. There's director ahead of you, there's VPs, there's, you know where you're going. Even if you're, want to switch from PR to marketing or go to the sales route, you can build out a resume, and it's a little bit historically a little bit more like checking boxes, yep, got that experience. Cool. That's on the resume. I can move up to here now. And when you're coming in as an ambassador, you don't necessarily understand. I didn't understand that world as well, even though I had worked in an office years ago in advertising. That was really junior me, and glassy-eyed, didn't understand anything. But getting back into that, having an advocate, that the most success I got for Hennessey and we were able to develop for bartenders, for advocacy, for what we were trying to do, was when I had somebody as a trade marketing director that really understood. He didn't understand what I was doing, but he was passionate about it. So he would go and research cocktails on his own time. And I'd get Sunday morning emails of hey, what do you think about this? Or how did they do this? But he understood the business side. So we would come up with how to navigate internally. And so we would come up with a plan together, and then he would business it up. And we'd get the budget to go do something, or we'd figure out what needed to happen. What was our goal? And then how do we make that fit or be palatable for a framework or for somebody in finance to say, yeah, here's the money for that. And that was beautiful for me, because that taught me a lot more about, okay, how do I go and get this done? I can have the greatest idea in the world, but if I can't translate it to the business, then it doesn't need to have sales KPIs necessarily, but what is the KPI? What is the goal? Are we just going to throw a crazy party at Tales of the Cocktail, or is there a purpose to this madness? Yeah. And that was navigating those waters, having an advocate and a champion on the brand team to do it. That really worked. And I've since learned how to find those champions and seek them out. And they've sought me out as well, because of the ways that we've been able to make beautiful things happen.
That's incredible. So what would you recommend for somebody how to find one? How do you know when that person is going to be your advocate?
It's the person that often rubs other people the wrong way, at least in my experience. They're the person that's trying to get stuff done, and they're frustrated that it can't happen anyway. Or they're trying to find a new way of doing things. They're not set with just okay, well, this is the way we do things. Okay, this is the way we do things. Well, if that's the way you're doing things, then you're not going to experience growth. And I think Hennessey had a lot of these great people working for it when I started, because we started a massive double-digit growth trajectory for the last 10 years. So it's there were a few of them there. I just happened to work. My direct report happened to be one of them. And so seeking them out, I think it's finding people that want to do things a little bit differently, and finding ways to make it work together, because he didn't necessarily understand the bar world as well at that point. But since he's gone on to get I think he's got WSET 3 accreditation. Wow. He's taken not bar 5-day, but the lower level one. He's got his resume is technically better than mine for doing my job at this point. So he definitely ran with it. So it's shout out to Ignacio. He really built that for me, and we started working great together in that way. And I think he was a little frustrated because he came from Diageo, and Diageo had a much more structured way of working than MH did at the time, and he was trying to bring that structure while still getting results. And I didn't understand any business structure, and trying to be the ambassador and go off and do trainings. And we found ways to collaborate really well on that.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. I mean, Tom, I don't know if your company, how many people are in the company now?
I think 10.
But there are definitely people more senior, I know you guys collaborate a lot, and there's people.
Oh, it's all collaboration, and actually the president of the company is Romina, who she and her husband started the cooperative, and she is the master distiller for Capuro Pisco. And she had also, she has, went to college for marketing and all this stuff. And she worked for Southern in California for years and learned that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of background, and we have a lot of coachings as to how to do that stuff, but it's not like working for a big company in any way, shape, or form, because, it's like we get on company Zooms, and it's pretty much a cooperative in those too, because people are saying, so how do we do this? How do we do that? What do you think? And what do you think? And then we kind of have this hybridized solution, and I think it's great.
That sounds amazing. I love the fact that collaboration, it's just such a unique way of working. I'm assuming one person has to take the lead and decide what's the final solution.
Yep.
But
in any collaboration, you got to know where the buck stops, or who's making the final decision. Otherwise, you just keep running in circles.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm sure there is. And Jordan, to your point about networking, finding that person, it's a conversation I've had with other brand ambassadors. If you're in a company that there are, if you're in a Campari or a Bacardi or any, company where there are senior people rolling around, get to know them. Go into the office, ask to attend meetings, have those conversations, make sure they know that you exist. I got to know Larry, I got to know Ivan Menezes, I used to be the person he always requested to be the bartender at his house, or to do a spirit tasting for his guests, or Larry Schwartz, who was his second in charge, I got to know them because they used to come to the bar sometimes, or I'd have to be the person presenting to them in a meeting, and I would spend time networking with them a little bit, finding out about them, talking to them, getting to know what their family is. I would research them, find out what schools they went to and see if we had something in common, just so I was on their radar, because which is important. It kind of helps you get to that next level in your career. And a lot of people are they feel shy, and I'm don't just say hi. They want to talk to you. You're in the field. They're stuck in an office. You probably have a lot more exciting stories, that you can tell them about their brands and what's happening in the industry that they would love to hear. I used to send Ivan every once a month, a little note, hey, here's some cool things your brands did. And he'd be thank you so much, Elaine. So we kept in touch, once a month. I just sent him a little hey, I know you're really busy, but thought you would like to know some cool, fun things and some photos. And he seemed to like it. So I don't know. I was always on his radar.
Yeah, I think that's important. When you're working with a big brand, especially, you're in the field a lot, but if you're working with the brand team as well, they're in the office every day. So you need to be there to be an advocate for yourself and to have FaceTime with people. The amount of times that when I was in New York, I wanted to be in that office, because it was, even if I'm just sitting in the, the little cafe area, doing some work on my computer, because somebody's going to come for a coffee and we're going to strike up a conversation, and you're going to get a new idea. You're going to get included in something, or you're going to help them in what they're looking to do. So it does get you more work, but at the end of the day, you become more valuable to the company, and therefore you've increased your value and your face time with people.
No, absolutely.
That's why people thought I lived in New York, I think.
Yeah, exactly, because you're here so often. All right, so let me see. I'm looking at. Can you tell us a little background? Okay, I think you actually talked about this. All right, we're going to talk about Tom. I'm going to go to you. So, as a former buyer, you dealt with a lot of numerous like sales reps and brand ambassadors. And what were some of the common mistakes you were experiencing? And what are some of the things people did well? But let's talk about the mistakes, because it's nerve-wracking talking to a buyer.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like a lot of people in that field don't do a lot of due diligence when they're going into a bar. So they really need to know what the bar is going to possibly take. They need to see that back bar and see, all right, they've got a ton of this category, so most likely they're not going to replace something, whatever. And when I was working at Irving, we would get very, very frequently brands would come in, and we had quite a few. We had a great cocktail list. Megan, you're the best. People would come in and say, "Oh yeah, could I have that cocktail? But could you switch the gin and put my gin in it?" And Elaine said that she thinks I'm very nice. Well, I've had people I've worked with, Dan Greenbaum, who said that you can tell somebody off with a smile on your face and they won't even know that you told them off. So I would turn to these reps and brand ambassadors and just say, yeah, I understand what you're asking. And how about I just put your brand on the receipt and let me make it for you the way we decided is the best drink, because different, let's say, gins taste differently and behave differently in a cocktail. And I'll tell you, man, 80 to 90% of the time, that person would be like, oh, yes, please, thank you. Because the golden handcuffs, you lose perspective if you're only tasting your stuff. You've got to try what's going on. And you're also respecting that buyer, and you're building a relationship so that they know that you've opened the door, so that they're not going to be like, oh, geez, here they come again. Whereas you're going to come in and you'll say, hey, could I try something that you're doing? Great. And then maybe give them a little sample of one of your things and say, maybe figure something out to do with this or whatever. That is rolling into what else you were asking, Elaine. That's one of the most successful things.
Expand on that. What's the most successful?
Yeah, so Adam Schumann is a good friend, and he is brilliant in this business. And he took a very small liquor portfolio at Skurnik and exploded it to millions and millions of dollars. He's a great guy. And when he was just taking that over, he was one of the people I loved to see so much, because he was not pushy. He'd come in with a little sample bottle. He would always order our cocktails, and he'd be like, hey, do you need a fill in the blank? And he would just leave me a little bottle. And then I would play around with it. And it's like, yeah, that works, or maybe it doesn't work. And he never took it personally. He was always on the journey to find the fit. And I think that's our job, is to find the thing that works the best. You may not take all of my stuff. It may not work for you, but I know I have something that'll work.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And also it's a great strategy, because you're right. As brand ambassador, and Jordan, I'm sure you agree, like, you feel the pressure, right? You go into a bar, you're spending your company's money, so you have to, buy your brand. But if you could have that, and I learned that, I came up in the Death and Company days where you wouldn't dare ask the bartenders to switch out a brand on the drink menu. No way. Like that would be kicked out the door. You'd be like, get out of my bar. That's not how we operate. So I had to learn to navigate. Like, I don't need you to switch. I never thought to just say, hey, can you put actually, I think some of them just did it like, hey, I'll just put it on there. But it is a great option for brands. You do want to support your brand, but it's like, I had this conversation actually with the guy from Kapali, and I was very glad he did this. He was at a bar and he texted me. He said, Elaine, how should I order our brand? It's not on the menu. Should I ask them to substitute our brand into for another rum. I was like, no. I was like, let them make the drink you have, or ask them, since they carry the product, could they make something with the brand? Could they come up with a cocktail and give them some direction? I said, because it does piss them. I can understand. It's like you spent a lot of time on that cocktail. So I think asking them so they could try other brands, but still look respectful to their company and put the right brand name on there. You know, as long as you're not doing that all the time and you're actually, you know, what do you think, Jordan? I think that's a nice solution.
Yeah, I think that's a great solution. I've had success as well on the when Tom talks about like understanding what the bar wants. Well, if I'm traveling to a new market and I don't know that market as well, I often challenge the sales team ahead of time to say, where are we visiting? What's the point of this visit? Like, am I going into, do they already carry the brand? Am I going in to educate, or do you need me to like help you place the product? And what are the possibilities of replacement here? Like, are we going for VS all the way through XO? Or are we going for just one in particular, or what's that going to be? And maybe what level is the bar at as far as how do you see them as, are they a Death and Co, or are they, you know, like a mom and pop, you know, great restaurant that's trying to dabble in cocktails? So it's understanding the bar and what that bar needs or may want from you, or what value you can add to them. Because I think some of it is, I've had the greatest success in like mid-range restaurants that are, you know, in the middle of nowhere, have never seen an ambassador before. And I can go in and just say, hey, like, let me show you a few cocktails. Like, if your staff like these, maybe that inspires you to go make something, or have a core repertoire of cocktails that you can play with local ingredients and make something interesting for them. But certainly going in and forcing your way in, going into a bar that already knows how to make cocktails. I always say, I'm not going in to tell them how to make cocktails. Like, that's asinine of me. Like, I haven't been permanently behind a stick in 10 years. For me to go in and teach you how to make cocktails would be stupid. But I might go in and say, hey, like, let me, in my course of educating your staff, if we have a set education period, maybe I make you a classic because you've never had a Hennessey VSOP Sazerac, for instance. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I'm showing you how to make a Sazerac. I'm like, hey guys, thanks. Let's have this drink together, and then, you know, go get ready for service or whatever. But it's a touchy thing. I think Hennessey on that point has given me a lot of leeway to, I can order other cocktails. I can order a gin cocktail on the menu. Hennessey doesn't even own a gin, but I can have a gin cocktail. I can have a pisco. I can have other things, because to Tom's point, if I were only drinking Hennessey, I would not be expanding my palate. I would not be learning anything. I would not necessarily be following the trends. And one of my jobs is to guide the brand and the brand team to what bars are asking for, or what bars are looking for.
No, I think that's a great point. And I think as brand, it's the one thing when I was spoken to brands, and I think something brand ambassadors have to have that conversation when you're starting their job. Like, okay, so when I go to the bar, somebody's not going to have my brand, or I want to try what the account is doing. I want to make sure that's okay with you, because they are experimenting and they are doing cool things, and it kind of flatters them by me trying the different things that they have been working really hard on. And it helps me also, to your point, Jordan, like, understand some of the key trends, expand my palette, see what's going out there. So, and Tom, I like your point about like dropping the small, you know, the bottle off. I'm like, hey, you know, I know you make great drinks. Here's a bottle for R&D. Love to hear what you think, you know, next time I'm in town, if there's something you want to come up with, and if it works for you, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But you know, I think it's a great way of at least getting a brand to try out, an account to try out your product without forcing it on them. Yep. But obviously you're dropping off something you think might fit because you did a little research. You scanned the back bar, you saw what their gap was, not just anything like, oh, you have 1,000 rums, there's another one. Like, there's a gap in your portfolio. I think you might like it. All really, really great points. All right. So Tom, we talked about buyers. Is there anything else that really pisses you off, Jordan, or anything you've seen people do?
I had a GM once that taught me this while I was the bar manager. And, you know, I was happy to, you know, people are coming in to taste me on alcohol during the day while I'm doing inventory. Great. However, he was like, no, you've got to set a precedent of like, this was a big 300-seat venue. He's like, no, if you don't have a meeting, I don't have time. Like, set a meeting. My time is as valuable as yours. Even though you have cool stuff, like, set a meeting. If you want me to sit with you for half an hour tasting new wines or new spirits or whatever, set a meeting and show up with that intent. And that was important for me to learn as a young bar manager. And I think that does really well for a lot of spirit people or wine people or any distributor or sales rep or ambassador. Like, if you're going out for drinks, that's one thing. And you have like a little product to drop off and you know, have it in your own time, great. But if you're intending to have a conversation about your product in that time, set a meeting.
No,
absolutely. Ambush is the worst. I hated being ambushed. And on the other hand, if somebody came in, like, you know, I'm an ambassador or a sales rep, and they sat at my bar one night and was asking me questions, and they weren't talking any business and having cocktails and whatever. And then at the end, they'll say, hey, listen, I take care of some spirits. Could we have an appointment? Absolutely, because they're doing the smart, educated way of doing it instead of just, hi, I'm Tom. I was like, can I have a meeting? No, it's like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing here. Cool. I might have something that you might want to taste. What do you think? And usually, well, when I was a buyer, I would be like, yeah, absolutely. Come in tomorrow at this time or whatever. Yeah. You know, but ambush, no. Ambush,
never worked. No, it's a great way of knowing. That's a great way of getting an appointment, which is, you know, just sitting there getting to know time, because it does take time and effort. I also want to talk about, so that's great. Those are some common mistakes. I think a lot of people don't know how to make, and making that appointment. You know, I know a lot of brand ambassadors wander around aimlessly, just going to accounts and, you know, and not getting anything done. I'm a big believer you should have a goal, whatever it is, in every account. So it could be just, I'm going to examine the back bar and research the menu so I can see what the gaps are, but I'm not going to maybe get the name of the bartender. Next time I'm going in, maybe it's having that conversation with the bar, you know, having different goals so you actually do something everywhere you go. And speaking of, like, you know, having goals and meeting with accounts, obviously there's so much information you have to gather. And Tom, you and I talked about yesterday about, you know, there are different ways you can keep track of all the information. I kind of like yours, and you use a couple of different things of, like, when you present and also how you keep track. So
yeah, this is definitely the nimbleness and efficiency of the company I work with. And we use Trello boards. I think any of those type of things are really convenient, but like we'll have a board, and then I have a card for each account, and then all of my notes on that. I have an iPad with a pen, yeah. And I take notes as I'm doing the tasting about how, say, this guy likes this, but it's not going to fit until maybe the fall, or they want to run out of their blah, 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 or he doesn't know how to use this but wants to revisit it. And then you take a screenshot of that and you can post it on the Trello board, so you can always just kind of circle back on that. I'm not nearly as efficient with this as I wish I was, but it's really a super good tool. And the people in our company that use it religiously are just, they're snap on it, man. And it's a great use of the current technology and not like overdone, you know. Yeah, the Trello boards are great. And then we use Slack as our interpersonal thing. And it's like everybody's in California and I'm here, so it's like we're in the same office all the time. So it's like there's some really good technology that we've been able to deal with in the last, because of this last year.
No, I also love that. I mean, I never thought, I mean, I've used the Trello as an organization, but a tool, but like being out in the field and using it as a way to keep track of counts is really interesting. And also I'm now getting myself a stylus pen with an iPad. So yeah. I can because if you're trying to type everything, it can take a while. So to be able to write notes and be able to screenshot it. But you also use the iPad, obviously, because you have so many products, you know, you have to carry them all. So how do you use the combination of
so we have a lot of products, and this is my sample kit right here. So Jesus. Everything is in little bottles. Like I said, I used to be an actor, and what I learned from being an actor is you're always prepared for an audition. So what that means is I've got my entire portfolio with me all the time. So when I'm tasting somebody on something, they taste it and they're looking through my little book, I also have everything on my iPad that I can page through so they can see the full bottle shots. But if they're going, oh, you know, that special release Aquavit, I'd love to try that. I'm like, hold on, pull it out of my bag. There you go, try it. You know, and they're like, what else? I'm like, what else do you want to try? How about this? Yep. Hang on. Here you go. And a little try. And so it's it's good, and it's not like I'm not carrying 24 bottles around. I'm carrying 24 little tiny bottles around.
No, I love it. I thought that was such an efficient way of doing it because it's really hard.
It's genius.
It's genius, isn't it? Genius.
Yeah.
And then have on the iPad.
Roller bags that weigh a ton, and you have to like drag through the heat. Yeah.
And you're also, when you got the roller bag, it's like, look at me, I'm a liquor rep. And I sneak in with a backpack with a couple of these little lunch bags, and I can be a little under the radar, which I like that too.
Genius.
Jordan, you have any? Everybody, I know a lot of people have lots of different tricks of the trade they use out there. Like Xavier from Grand Marnier had a great one. You know, he uses Google Map tool for every city he's in, so he creates customized maps.
You just stole mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You do that too?
I do that too.
It's genius. And then it's also because I travel so much, it was started out as being helpful to me, to being like going back into a market, maybe the sales rep has changed or something like that. And I could say, well, last time we went here. The head bartender was so-and-so, whatever. It became great because friends started asking me, where do I go when I go X? And I'm like, share map.
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's all the best places you want to go.
No,
and it works out. It works out incredibly because then you have a guy that doesn't live in your city sending people to your bar for you. And it's like, at the end of the day, if you can add value to a bar, like people want to show off. And if I'm saying, you know, hey, I haven't seen you in 6 months, but I have like a bunch of friends on vacation, they're coming in, like, you know, they're going to come see you on XX night.
Yeah, I think
that's incredible. And it's at the end of the day, we're all just one big community. You know, it's a beautiful industry to be in. And so the more camaraderie we have, the more kind of like shared connections, I think that's what makes it really joyous at the end of the day. That's why that's why we've all been hurting, because all these cocktail weeks, we can't go have like high school reunion again and see each other.
That's very true. Tom, do you use the Google Maps as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you can just take a spreadsheet and drop it on there, and then all your little pins show up, and it's like, this is awesome. I mean, it's really, that's a real valuable one. I mean, you can do it like by product, it's
wow.
Brilliant.
I gotta explore this a little more. I haven't utilized it and tried it out. No, and when I've told other people about it, they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, Google Maps. You can, you know. They're like, "I had no idea," because everybody just uses to get to A to Z, and I'm like, "Nope." You can use a whole organization tool of bars and restaurants and put notes on it and create customized maps. And no, I think it's great. When I start traveling again, it's like I'm definitely picking that up. All right, so I want to talk about, because I know we've been about an hour, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty here at the end. Jordan, a lot of your role has evolved into one where you're developing strategy. You mentioned that, like, that's kind of a big part of your role, which is, it's a very different step from coming as a brand ambassador, educator, creating cocktails, and now being really involved with the brand, so how did that come to be? Like, how did you start working on strategy with the brands? And like, it's been somebody mentoring you, like, how did you evolve in that role?
I think it came to be with the champions we were talking about, and starting to look at it as a greater whole. It started with like, oh, we need Jordan. We need a brand ambassador. Jordan will be the guy to, talk to press when we do PR things and elements like that. Oh, to go train distributors. This kind of like common stuff for a big brand, but there was no through line of what we were doing for bartenders. It was like, go train in this city, then go train in this city, then go train in this city. And it's like, oh, well, we should be doing something at Tales of the Cocktail. Well, what are we going to do if there's no link every day? There's nothing else going on. And then it started to just kind of organically develop in, we want to do more. We see success in these little visits, but how do we amplify that Do we need, and then it was like, okay, well, we need more regional ambassadors as well. What would that look like? And it's like, we looked at my role and said, okay, well, what works about my role? And what of that is because I'm national, and what of that would work differently if I were in one city all the time? And it was very much, I was the lens of what would work for bars and bartenders, because I always looked at it like I was that, I think very much like what Tom was saying earlier, I'm that like geeky bartender that went to all the educations, that went to all that, and was like, which one of those worked best for me? Like, which one of those resonated 10 years later? Well, what would that look like if we did it today? Would it look the same just for cognac, or do we do something different? And so it was a lot of me filling a need for the brand, and or then it started to become me presenting ideas that said, hey, we can push this forward, because I got the confidence that they liked what we had already accomplished. So, okay, well, this is what I think we should do next. Or, a lot of times a brand ambassador, when you get comfortable, should be a steward for the brand in a way, like making sure that new people on the brand aren't coming up with a strategy that might be counter to what you've been building towards, or might just be, a quick sales idea, but it's not, it's going to hurt you in the end, maybe.
No, and that's an interesting point. But, presenting ideas is a big thing. A lot of brand ambassadors I talk to, they're super creative. They have lots of stuff going on. But, if you don't present your idea in the right way, it just goes out the window, meaning you have to actually have a structure to it. So did somebody sit down and teach you, like, okay, so when you present your idea, you have to do it in a certain way? Yeah. So what does that look like?
My first PowerPoint was black background, white type, and an essay of the idea, like just typed out. It's like no photos, no pretty graphs, no nothing like that. And I learned very quickly, no one's going to read that. It was very much, hi, buddy. This is Brewy. Oh
my God,
he's done with my talk. But it was very much about getting your succinct point. Like, you don't need to explain the entire idea in its, at length. You need to get the hook and figure out what's the point. Like, what are we not doing? What's the opportunity, and what can we do to seize the opportunity, and what's the end goal? And if that's what you've got, the buy-in, you get buy-in, then it's like, okay, well, what do you need to possibly get this done? Well, here's possibly, pie in the sky idea without talking to a venue, without talking to Tales or Portland Cocktail Week or whoever. Here's approximately what I think we need, and then go from there. And it got better with time, and champions working for the brand helped get some of those things done. And if you get a few people buying in, and when you get one success, it's a lot easier to get your second one and your third one, because they have belief in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you solidified yourself as like somebody who has good ideas and actually can help follow through, then they're like, all right, this person's, ideas are legit. And they're not always winners. I mean, we always have a few ideas we present out there. Tom, as a cooperative,
if you don't have a winner, it's important to be honest and say, like, I've looked at so many wrap-up reports where I've read somebody else's wrap-up report of the same event. I was like, I'm not sure we were at the same event, because this one seems really cheery, and I'm not sure that went the same way. And so, but getting a breakdown of like what the goal was, where we missed, maybe why we missed, and so like what's the learning, and then applying that the next time.
Yeah, I've seen some reports. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It is, and because it's hard. You're like, oh shit, if I tell them I failed, they're gonna be angry. But I think it's more like, this is what we learned. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. This is what my solution is going forward, and always having a solution. I mean, Tom, working in a cooperative, I'm assuming you guys have to come up with ideas and like solutions.
Oh my God, yeah, that's all it is. And and luckily everybody encourages everybody to be creative, and there's wild solutions that get embraced, and we go forward. So it's like I said, it's great to be with people who are outside the box and really thinking creatively all the time. And speaking of Death and Company, their entire team is here for a tasting that I'm going to be leading them
so
through
fun.
shortly.
we're wrapping up. So I'm going to ask you the last question. On that note, being the brand ambassador world coming to life right here with all the team here, I always like to end on one question, which is, what is one of the key lessons you have learned while being a brand ambassador that you wish that you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I think for me, it's to be really patient and trust in your product. You don't have to do more than that.
Good. Yeah, and I would say it's, at the finding out the goals. I had this idea that, like, when I started, every bar I walked into, I needed to put a cocktail on the menu, and that it is about growth. That you're not going to be in every bar overnight. Not everyone's going to love you overnight or ever. So finding the areas you can win, because when you, like, advocacy is a beautiful thing. Like, you love the brand, but other people may not have had the opportunity to love the brand. They didn't have the moment. They didn't have the epiphany moment. They didn't have that, that tasting in France or whatever that you went through in your training. So you need to kind of create a world for them and create an opportunity for them to open up to the brand. And it's not a one visit thing or two visit thing. It might be a pursuit of multiple visits and multiple moments and multiple shared moments, and not forced education or anything like this. Just saying, like, hey, try this at your leisure, and then maybe I'm going to see you again somewhere. Try it again. What have you played with? Or getting one advocate in a town and going out for drinks with them and having those great conversations. It is a patient process, but it's a lasting process. And, like, a sales team can get placements with big brands. You can pay for placements in a lot of places. You can find a way to get that done. That's not lasting. That's never going to last. It's when somebody loves your brand. I think of some of those trainings I went to 20 years ago, and if I opened a bar tomorrow, that brand would be behind that bar, because I'm an advocate for that brand. I love that brand as well as the brand I currently represent in Hennessey. So it's there's room for everyone, and if you have a good product, I think, to echo Tom's point, like, a great product is the core of any advocacy foundation or any work you're doing, because it's not hard. It's not hard if the product's good.
That is so true. It's definitely not hard. No, and really, really great points. I think just patience, and it is not easy. And that's also a lesson for brand owners out there too, that it takes time and it takes effort. And if you try to push too fast, you'll end up losing. But if you just take the time and get people to fall on the same love that you have for the product, and as you said, not everybody will, but when you do, they become lifers. And I think that's more important.
I heard a great quote about a brand ambassador, and it's from a friend that was running the ambassador team in Canada. And he said, sales team will sell things this month, this quarter, this year. Brand ambassadors sell things 3 years from now.
Nice. That's a great quote.
Great.
That's really, really good. I'm going to take that.
The long game. Yes,
it's definitely exactly. It's a long game. And that's why brands hire brand ambassadors. They're there for relationship building and making people fall in love with the brands. Gentlemen, this was fantastic. Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on. This will be up on Facebook for a while, and then it goes up on YouTube and all those great things. So if you want it, you can take it.
Great.
But thanks for sharing all your information, also putting this on Facebook. And it really was a pleasure. It's really great to be able to chat with both of you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. And Tom, look out for me, because now that I know you carry a back bar with you at all times, I'm going to find you when travel opens up again.
Yeah, I want you to try some of my stuff, man.
Yeah, brilliant.
Party.
Done.
All the time. All right, gentlemen. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
There we go.